Hello and welcome to Geojit Spotlight. Do the general elections have an impact on stock market volatility? As investors, what should you do? Well, with just over a week left from 2024 general election results, we have with us Mr. Satish Menon, Executive Director, Geojit, to answer these questions. Welcome, Mr. Menon. Historically, how have the Indian elections impacted stock market volatility? What are some of the strategies investors can use to navigate potential volatility during the election period?
Historically, if you see the election results for the last 20 odd years or even more, the results outcomes have only affected in the short term. As a country in India, the long-term averages, the long-term movement of stock market will always be in line with the economic growth. The short-term trend, if the outcomes are not in line with the expectation, there will be a short-term reaction, most probably downward side. And that could be a knee-jerk which might remain for maybe a few months or so. But on the long-term side, I don't think, at least history doesn't tell us there has been any strategic shift in terms of the growth of the Indian market. And I think the same is applicable to this election also. Today the market is expecting the existing government to come back, and market is expecting the policy to continue. And I don't see any reason to doubt that expectation. My personal feeling is the reforms will continue. If the same government is there, it will be good. Even if something happens otherwise, I think Indian economy will grow, and the long term that will reflect in the stock market indexes also. A normal investor doesn't need to be bothered about what happens in the election results. An investor invests in stock market for some long term goals. That ideally should not change depending on how the results are coming in. If you have cash in your hands, and if this result sessions, I don't know whether it is 1 week before and 2 weeks afterwards, or whatever the time period is, if the result session gives you some avenues of investing your extra cash in a cheaper market, I think you should do it. Otherwise, I don't think an investor need to time the market. It is only for well-informed investors who has high investments in the stock market and who's actually tracking this. For a layman, for a normal investors, I think the results should not play any role in their investment timings.
Okay. So are there any specific sectors of the Indian economy that are likely to be more or less sensitive during the election outcome? Can you highlight some potential winners or losers in the stock market based on the political landscape?
I don't think there is any sector which needs to be related to the election results. But there are some sectors which is purely dependent on how India grows. And two of the sectors would be FMCG and the consumption. These are the least volatile. Still doesn't link it to the election result. These are the two sectors which are really least volatile to whatever happens, because India is in a structural growth. India's demographic needs these two sectors primarily. So this might be, so if you want to play very, very safe, these two sectors might be a kind of a hedge towards the volatility. Not that it really matters. We are all looking at long terms, and long term, like I said earlier, everything should go as per the country's growth or the economic growth of the companies listed. So these two sectors can have some spending done by the government also. And an interesting factor is FY25 monsoon. It is expected to be above forecast, which is likely to boost the rural economy. These are the two sectors which could be less volatile than others if the election results outcomes are not as expected. Apart from this, we believe manufacturing sector like capital goods, industrial power, infra will also benefit from future measures of the government.
Well, we've just spoken about the retail investors. What about international investors? Do they typically react to Indian elections? Do you anticipate any significant shift in foreign investment flows based on the election results?
I again think FIs are here for long terms mostly, and their reaction need not be linked to the election result per se. Maybe in the short term, they are a little bit volatile in the few period before the results and few period after the results. In the last 2 months, especially if you see, they have been net sellers in the market. My personal feeling is the outflow is expected to revert to positive inflows to the Indian stock market based on the election outcome, which we assume would be the stability of this new continuity and the stability of this new government, and the policies announced till now will be continued by the new government also.
Well, earlier in the conversation, you were mentioning that elections can cause short-term fluctuations. But how do you expect the long-term trajectory of the Indian stock market to be affected by the upcoming elections?
So it is the same thing. Historically, again, if you see, election results do not actually influence the long-term growth of the market. The general expectation is this government will continue and the policies of this government will continue. So I don't think a negative effect will come. Definitely not in the long run, but I don't think not even in the short term. If there is an volatility seen which is negative, I think you can use your cash to invest in the market again. One particular concern is there are certain sectors and stocks where the prices have moved much far ahead of the fundamentals. There could be a correction in those sectors. That is where we need to be careful. In the last few years, we have seen good markets, and if the economic growth doesn't come as we expect, there could be some time or value correction. But that could be used as a time to invest more in the markets.
One last question before we wind up, Mr. Menon. What key advice would you give to Indian investors for navigating the stock market during this elections season? Should they consider adjustments to their investment strategies at this point in time?
The answer is not actually related to the election results. What we see currently is the mid cap and the small caps, the valuation has gone little too high to our comfort. Maybe this could be the time for you to restructure your allocation, reduce mid and small and increase large cap. The premium valuation of mid caps are very high, which I don't think can sustain. If not a value correction, a time correction is definitely expected. Large cap, on the other hand, is trading at a fair value, and we are looking at an earning growth of 13 to 15% for these stocks, which will support the positive movement of prices of large caps. Large cap are a better place to handle the global volatility also, which has a mixed outlook due to high geopolitical risk and expected slowdown in the economy in calendar 25.
Well, as Mr. Menon just said, we should all focus on buying quality stocks and remain invested in the market for the long term and ignore the short-term volatility and fluctuations in the market. Thank you, Mr. Menon, for speaking to Geojit Spotlight.